Hello everyone, my name is Jason, aka Bacon Chest, coach of the St Kilda Superiors. Welcome to week 12 of the MLBA. This week we are going up against Hat and the Portland Trailblazers. So, this is our third match against Hat. Previously faced off in the ICBA D-League where we got absolutely dunked on by a Delcatty. And then we have faced off in week 1 of this league, where we got dunked on by Hat's entire team, basically. Hat has a very scary roster, which you can see on your right. Couple of changes have been made from last time. I'm not going to go over the teams too much. And you notice that we don't have a team builder this week. That's because in this game, not all of my sets actually get shown. And so, given that there's a fair chance we face off again in playoffs, given we are both locked for playoffs, I didn't want to reveal everything straight off the bat. But the main change in terms of Hat's roster is the Dragonite over the Goodra. That is a bit of an issue in that, obviously, Dragonite's a much bigger offensive threat than a Goodra, particularly with access to Dragon Dance, the fact that with multi-scale, often, even if you're packing the 4x super effective ice coverage, you can't OHKO it unless you've got rocks up. So, I can talk about a couple of the sets. I've got a Piloswine, which is there to get up rocks. It guaranteed gets up rocks on my opponent's entire roster. I basically spec'd it to live a Z Superpower or a Z Focus Blast from Deoxys. I have Oblivious, so I can't be taunted, and I think it had it pretty much lived most high jump kicks from Blaziken, unless he was like maybe Adamant Life Orb or something like that. And so yeah, Piloswine was really, really good in this matchup. Obviously, also gives me the Ice Shard, and then I've got basically a bunch of things that can maybe check Dragonite, depending on his set. I was basically kind of hoping that my opponent would not have enough moves to be able to hit and kill everything on my team with that Dragonite, because obviously, like, it can run Z-Fly for Tangrowth, it can run Z-Earthquake for Metagross, and it could run Dragonium Z to break past things like Tornadus and Blastoise. I was kind of just hoping that I would be able to get those predictions right, and that was kind of how I was going to play around Dragonite. The other thing was that obviously if I can get rocks up, then it's much, much easier for me to revenge. So, look at this matchup. Hat's clearly decided to meme a little bit, bringing both the Aipom and the Minun. No idea what to expect from those two, but I, kind of figured my team can probably handle them. And yeah, so I'm just going to lead off with the Piloswine. Let's get straight into the game. So yeah, I lead off with the Piloswine as my opponent leads off with the Gliscor. This is great for me, because this is free rocks. As my opponent also goes for rocks, I could have gone straight for the Icicle Crash, but I was like, there's the chance of a Protect there just to get the Toxic Orb off. This turn I will Icicle Crash, I believe. Yep, so we get 45% off, so we can just kill this thing with another Icicle Crash, so that's fine. My opponent just elects to go for the Fake Out, which is all good. Don't mind there, as he now gets off a Toxic on my Piloswine, which is a little bit annoying. I'm able to click Earthquake just so I don't have to risk the miss. Dragonite and Gliscor were definitely not coming in there, given Icicle Crash could obviously kill. Now the Blaziken comes in, and I see the Protect as I just go for Earthquake because I don't want to let this thing get free set up on my team. And so I didn't want to let it Swords Dance into a Protect on the next turn. So I'm just going to go for an Earthquake there, as, yeah, Hat just brings in the Gliscor, so you can see, like, this Piloswine's getting worn down, but I'm not too fussed about that, because it doesn't need any health to be able to check a weakened Dragonite. As, yeah, Hat just goes for Protect there to get off more damage, but I've got Tangrowth inside now. So this is a nice and free Leech Seed, I believe. Yep. Yeah, because we are a Fizz-Def Tangrowth, so that we can take on most variants of Dragonite, unless he is +1 Z Sky Strike. As he gets off a Toxic on my Tangrowth, which is a little bit annoying, but we are able to get rid of that Minun. So, it's 6-4, but it was basically 6-4 at the start of the game, because Aipom and Minun are Unmons. So, I'm not feeling that great about this. He's still got, like, his 3 big offensive threats in the form of Blaziken, Dragonite, and Deoxys. And Gliscor is still annoying for my team, just because it can tank hits from things like Coco, and even Tornadus, like, not being able to just spam Hurricane, is a bit annoying. So, it brings out the Blaziken, and I just like to go straight for the Earthquake here, because I basically looked at Tangrowth and thought, well, I've got enough responses for the Dragonite. I just kind of have to hope that he's Z Sky Strike if he is DD 3 attacks with a Z move. And then that means that Metagross can tank a hit and be able to revenge. So yeah, I just decide, look, I'm just going for the Earthquake here. I don't think that I think that given I've got Blastoise as well, like, oh yeah, that's the other thing, that obviously unless it's Dragonium Z +1, it's not really breaking past Blastoise. Sorry, thinking too far ahead. Unless it's Dragonium Z +1, the Dragonite's not breaking past Blastoise, and the Blastoise is such an obvious switch in for Blaziken. I mean, I literally I traded in for this Blastoise just because it was a much better Blaziken switch in than Starmie was, and so I just really expect Hat to predict either the Blastoise or the Tornadus to come in. I guess, specifically the Blastoise, because obviously I have a Fire Weakmon in right now. So I just go straight for the Earthquake. We get that prediction right, as Hat goes for the Toxic, which would have been really bad, because obviously, like, Toxic plus Protect would have gotten a couple of rounds off on the Blastoise, and then potentially I might have been in range of High Jump Kick, depending on his set, and that would have been obviously really bad, or, he would have still been a good amount of health and could have just switched out and repeated that process later and taken me down. So, instead we're able to get that prediction right. This Blaziken's now pretty useless, as I'm able to go into Blastoise now, because now Blastoise is a totally fine switch in against this thing, as he actually elects to go for the Protect. I really question that play. I don't think that play makes any kind of sense. Like, yeah, he could have gotten a little bit of Toxic off on Tangrowth, but it has Regenerator. I'm going to get that back. So instead, now my Blastoise is at like full health. It gets Toxic, but I'm not too fussed about that, as I'm able to just pick up a Scald, and, that Blaziken's basically done nothing. Like, it's gotten Toxic off on one Mon. So yeah, really good turn for me there, as the Deoxys comes out, and I'm trying to remember what I click here. I think I don't really need Blastoise at this point, because yeah, I've still got healthy Tangrowth, I've still got Piloswine in the back, and I still have Metagross, so I can still take down Dragonite really easily. So this is like the last big threat for me, and all I need to do is stop him from setting up with this Deoxys. Because setup Z Deoxys could still potentially be an issue for my team. So, at that point, I'm just going to click Dragon Tail, because I am in fact an Assault Vest Blastoise, which is why I don't have Roar. Slurpuff would have been a massive issue for this Blastoise, but I just kind of banked on my opponent not bringing Slurpuff, given how much I bring Metagross. Like, I brought Metagross to most of my games. It's been, I think it's actually my second kill leader behind Coco, and that's only because Coco had one game where I picked up 5 kills. And so, yeah, I just really did not expect, like, Belly Drum Slurpuff. And any other Slurpuff was, yeah, like, not too big of it. I just didn't expect Slurpuff to come, if I'm being perfectly honest. But, yeah, so I'm just able to spam Dragon Tail and Ice Beam here, as you see, yeah, like, Multiscale plus Roost, that Ice Beam is going to be able to storm me out. But that's fine, because I can click Dragon Tail here, and that just ensures that this Dragonite is not able to be at full health, and potentially set up on something else in my team. As you can see here, he's just going to click Earthquake and finish off the Blastoise, but that is totally fine by me, because now I get to bring Piloswine back out, and I can just click Ice Crash and pick up a kill here, because nothing on my opponent's team is able to switch in. I do have to take a little bit of Toxic damage, but that's totally fine, because unless I guess he could have gone for like double protects there to potentially storm me out, but it just really wasn't going to work out too well, as we're able to get off Ice Cold Crash damage into an Ice Shard, and that's going to take out the Deoxys, leaving my opponent with just the Dragonite and the Gliscor. I'm feeling pretty confident at this point that we've got this in the bag, as yeah, the Gliscor comes back out, it's going to click Protect, Piloswine is going to go down, but I'm not too fussed about that. Actually, like, yeah. No, so that was fine. And now, oh yeah, I bring out the Tornadus here because I actually have HP Ice and I am Expert Belt, so this just OHKOs. I checked, so this was a roll, based on the spreads that we exchanged afterwards. I think originally I thought I was Timid. Yeah, no, he was calcing Timid, against his spread, and that would have been a roll massively in his favor. I was actually modest though, because I just didn't really respect the speed creeps in this game like all that much. Like I think Hat's team, you can see it on the right. I can't actually see it right now, but the speed tiers are pretty wonky, and so I just kind of went for a fairly slow Tornadus that I believe was actually, it was definitely outspeeding Dragonite. It may have been outspeeding base 95s, was probably what I was going for, but basically I was able to run Modest with a fair degree of impunity in this matchup, and that allows me to just straight Oko this Gliscor. Was still a roll, but I think it was a roll much more in my favor because of that. And so that's just going to be GG, because I'm obviously going to outspeed the Dragonite. He is Choice Banded Extreme Speed, so that could have actually been potentially really good late game. Obviously, Choice Banded Earthquake is going to do a hell of a lot to Metagross, and then everything else is not really liking Choice Banded E-Speed, aside from obviously the Tangrowth, but then again, you know, Choice Banded like Fire Punch could have potentially done a lot to that. So, yeah, pretty good ring there on Hat's part, but given how we played the early game, we were able to, like, I feel like I made some pretty good plays here, like, fairly aggressive plays with Tangrowth and Piloswine, just because what I kind of realized in this matchup was I didn't need those Mons. I didn't need all of my defensive Mons late game. I only needed like 2 of my 4 defensive Mons, being like Tangrowth, Blastoise, Piloswine, and Metagross, to be around in the late game, just to be able to check, you know, whichever offensive threats lived into the late game, because obviously like Dragonite, Deoxys, Blaziken, if you bring all 3 of those, you're not going to be able to keep all 3 of them into the late game, just because at some point you're going to be missing defensive cores, particularly when you've brought things like Minun and Apom, and therefore I'm going to be able to take those down. So we are able to pick up a 4-0 win over Hat. Really happy to finally get that out of the way, get the monkey off my back in that respect, especially because we are reasonably likely to face off again in the playoffs. I am really happy I didn't have to reveal a few of my sets, like my full sets, because yeah, we've got some heat in store, particularly because yeah, I don't think Hat brought his strongest team against me. I think something like Mega Aggron is incredible against my team. I don't have good ways of breaking it down, so that's something that I'll definitely be looking out for next time, but, you know, we'll see. I mean, maybe he'll watch this video and then decide not to bring that, after all. But we'll see. So that puts us at 8-4 at the end of the regular season, which is really good. That puts us on top of our division. We will finish in the top 4, probably. In terms of playoff contention, it might be 3rd, depending on forfeits, just because there are a couple of players who have dropped towards the end of the season. So there's a few more games to go. I think there's probably about 6 or 7 games that still need to be played before we can go into playoffs, but we'll see how that goes. And yeah, so I'm really happy with that. Been a really good season, to be honest. I feel like I've definitely improved over the course of the season. It's been really good playing against some, like, a pretty, like, good like, spread of quality players. And some really interesting teams. I am a huge fan of point-style drafts, particularly after this season. I just think it's a lot of fun. I think you get some really interesting teams. I think you get a lot more usage out of you get a lot more variety in terms of the low-tier mons that are getting picked. Just because, obviously, when everyone's picking 1 tier 5, or like maybe 2 tier 5s in a sort of more GBA style draft, then there's just kind of a set list of like 15 or so tier 5s that are very likely to get picked. Whereas here you can pick up some really wild stuff and really get usage out of it. I mean, not necessarily the case for our team, because I did decide to go for a more even spread of points. And, you know, like, I think that's also a cool thing, where you can have that strategy of having a few really big heavy hitters and then some, like, really niche mons. Or you can go for this more even spread, where you get to have a lot of, like, you get to have a team that, you know, would be out of place in OU, but, like, Coco aside, wouldn't be too out of place in, like, UU, I guess. Tornadus T is probably still OU. I'm so far behind on Smogon tiers. No idea. But yeah, so overall, been a really enjoyable season. Hopefully, we'll be able to march our way through playoffs. I do feel pretty confident that we can beat pretty much any of the other playoff teams. We don't have a bad matchup against most of them, which is nice. And we do still have a few tricks up our sleeve. You know, I think I've managed to bring all of my mons this season, which is good. And, like, I think particularly you know, sort of gotten used to Piloswine finally, which is good. So that gives me like some actual more rock options, because I think in the first like 6 or 7 weeks of the season I basically just brought Metagross with rocks, and that was my only real rocker, so that was good. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty comfortable offensively and defensively with pretty much the entire team. So hopefully we'll be able to go into playoffs, pick up a few more W's, and maybe even pick up a championship. But until next time, peace.